It happened in an instant. One moment, I was in the car, traveling through a foggy highway, lost in thoughts about work, family, and the unimportant matters of life. The next, a sharp screech of tires, a sudden jolt, and the world shattered into darkness. I remember feeling the crushing weight, the cold metal twisting around me, and then nothing. Absolute, all encompassing silence. There was no pain, no fear, just a deep, eerie stillness. I was no longer in my body. You know, it's hard to describe what happens next. It wasn't a feeling of floating, not exactly. It was more like a shift in awareness, a sense of being pulled away from everything I had ever known. I wasn't standing, but I was aware of my surroundings in a way that transcended physical senses. It felt like I was standing on the edge of the universe, looking into an abyss. But there was no fear, only a strange sense of peace. I saw it, a light, a radiant, almost blinding light, but it wasn't harsh. It was pure, enveloping, and somehow familiar. It wasn't a light from any earthly source. It felt like home. And there, in the center of the light, stood a figure. At first, I couldn't see their face. They were cloaked in that same overwhelming brightness, but somehow I knew this was someone powerful, someone who had the answers to every question I had ever asked and every question I had been too afraid to ask. I felt no fear, no judgment, just an overwhelming sense of love. It was as if I had been waiting for this moment my entire life. Well, am I here? I whispered, though I was aware that my voice didn't matter. The figure smiled softly, and the warmth of that smile wrapped around me, soothing my troubled soul. "Was you ready?" the figure spoke. The voice was calm, deep, and steady, like an anchor in the middle of a storm. "The time is near, and you must understand what is to come." I wanted to ask more, but something stopped me. It wasn't fear, it was just an overwhelming sense that I needed to listen, that this moment was far too important to waste on questions that could wait. Um, the figure extended a hand toward me, and though I didn't physically move, I felt drawn toward them. "Before we go further," the figure said, "you must understand that the world you knew, the world you took for granted, is about to change. A change unlike anything you have ever imagined. But you must prepare spiritually and with open eyes." I felt a sudden rush of memories, decisions made, paths chosen, regrets buried deep. How many times had I ignored the deeper callings of my soul? How many times had I sought fleeting comfort in the things that ultimately meant nothing? This was my reckoning, but it wasn't harsh. It wasn't a punishment. It was an opportunity to awaken. The figure looked at me, and for the first time, I felt like they truly saw me, not just the surface, like my face, my name, but the essence of who I was, my thoughts, my mistakes, and my desires, the part of me that I had buried. "Your soul has been lost in the distractions of this world," the figure said softly, "but you are not beyond saving. You must awaken and you must prepare." I didn't understand. What did they mean by prepare? Prepare for what? Before I could voice the question, the figure gently raised a hand, and I felt the world around me shift once again. "You must understand the path ahead," the figure said, and suddenly visions flooded my mind. Visions of a world I didn't recognize. It wasn't just about technology. It wasn't just about what we saw on the surface. The future I saw was far darker, more subtle, and more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. I saw people, ordinary people like you and me, making choices they thought were harmless. I saw technology growing, seemingly for convenience, for safety, but something more insidious lay beneath. It was as if the very fabric of human existence was being rewoven, but the cost was hidden. I could hear the voice of the figure, calm yet filled with urgency. "There are those who will promise peace, security, and ease, but these are false promises. The path they offer will lead you to the loss of something far more precious than you know." I didn't fully understand. I could sense the danger, but it was like, trying to hold on to a dream slipping away. "Look carefully," the figure continued. "The mark, the system of control, is coming. It will not announce itself as evil. it will come disguised as a blessing. And the greatest tragedy is that many will accept it, thinking it will bring them peace. The visions became clearer. I saw people lining up, eager to accept something they didn't fully understand, but they believed it would make their lives easier. They were signing away their freedom, their connection to something divine. It was a choice that seemed simple, but the consequences were far reaching. Spiritual preparedness, the figure continued, is not just about belief. It's about awakening to the deeper truths of the soul, to understanding that your life is not yours alone. You are part of something far greater, and the choices you make now will shape your eternity. Suddenly, everything went dark again, and I felt myself being pulled back toward the light. But this time, I wasn't afraid. The figure's words echoed in my mind. You are ready, but you must prepare and awaken others too. The light intensified, pulling me back from the abyss, from the peacefulness of the realm I had touched. My body returned, and with it the pain of the crash. But there was something different now. Something had shifted in me. I couldn't put it into words, but I knew that I had been given a glimpse into a truth too important to ignore. The world was changing, and so was I. And as I regained consciousness, I realized that the journey had only just begun. The world around me was still dark when I opened my eyes, but this time I wasn't alone. I could feel the presence of someone watching over me. The crash was a blur, but the light, the overwhelming eternal light, had stayed with me. It wasn't just in my mind, it was real. And I felt it guiding me, steadying me, like the hand of an unseen parent reaching through the chaos of my life. I didn't know where I was, but I could sense that this place was not of this world. It was not the body I had left behind or the life I had known. This realm was different, calm, immense, yet it pulsed with a strange energy, as if something monumental was about to unfold. And then I heard it, the voice again, soft but impossible to ignore. You are seeing only part of the picture, the figure said, though they were not physically present. I didn't need to see them to know they were close, within reach. You are awakening, but there's more you must understand. The words hung in the air as I stood there, rooted yet weightless, floating between the world of the living and something beyond. The sensation was foreign but comforting, like being wrapped in the warmth of the sun after a long, cold night. I felt that same way, but eventually I realized something. Look ahead, the voice instructed. See the path you are walking and what is to come. Suddenly, my vision shifted. It was as if a veil was being lifted from my eyes, revealing a future I had never imagined, a future both familiar and unrecognizable. The scenes that unfolded before me were not of far-off places or distant times. They were now, and they were coming faster than I had realized. I saw a world that was rapidly changing, a world where technology promises to solve all our problems. Phones, computers, artificial intelligence, all of it advancing so quickly that it became impossible to imagine life without it. People were connected in ways never before possible. Instant communication, endless knowledge, boundless convenience. Everything was seamless, effortless. People moved through life like it was a dream, enjoying comforts and luxuries that previous generations could only dream of. But there was something missing. It was subtle at first, a slight hollow feeling beneath the surface. I saw people, their faces glowing with the light of their screens, but their eyes, there was no depth in their eyes. They were lost in the conveniences of their world, disconnected from something far more profound. Their hearts, I realized, were heavy with a silent emptiness that they couldn't quite understand. Vigor's voice broke through the scene, calm but heavy with meaning. This is the path you are on. The promises of peace, safety, and progress are deceiving. A system is coming, one that will appear as a solution to the world's problems, but its cost will be greater than you can fathom. I didn't fully understand. The visions I had seen were not some distant fantasy. They were real, they were happening. This was the world we were already building. And the mark the figure had spoken of before, was this what it was? A world controlled by technology, by convenience, by something that would bind the human soul to the very machines we had created? Look again, the voice urged. The vision shifted. This time, I saw a line of people, one after the other, standing in front of an unassuming booth. They were waiting their turn, each of them stepping forward, eager to receive something. I couldn't quite see it at first, but as the people accepted it, I noticed a faint glow on their hands, a small, barely noticeable symbol, like a mark burned into their skin. It was subtle, as if it was a part of them, part of the world they lived in. Some took it with joy, they thought it was the answer. Others hesitated, but there was something so alluring about it, something that promised them something they couldn't resist: security, comfort, power. The figure spoke again, this time with a deep sorrow that seemed to reverberate through my very being. This mark is not what it seems. It will start small. It will look harmless, even beneficial. It will promise ease and prosperity, but its true nature will be revealed only when it is too late. I could see it now. The people, each receiving the mark, oblivious to what it truly meant. They were promised a better life, and so they accepted it, not knowing that this small choice would bind them to a system that would erode everything that made them human. They were sacrificing their soul, their spiritual freedom, for the sake of convenience. The mark will divide, the figure continued. It will separate those who choose to remain connected to the divine from those who embrace the system. The cost of this decision will not be measured in money or power, but in the very essence of your soul. I saw families, communities standing at a crossroads. Some accepted the mark eagerly, thinking it was a step toward a better future. Others, those who felt the deep gnawing emptiness within them, hesitated. They did not know why, but something about it felt wrong. It felt like a trap, a slow, creeping erosion of humanity. Those who choose the path of the mark will be led astray, the figure said softly. They will believe they are doing what is best for themselves and for their families, but in truth, they are accepting a system that will isolate them from the divine. It will be a slow, subtle descent, and they will not realize it until they have already fallen too far. The scenes unfolded further. I saw how people would be divided, those who accepted the mark and those who refused. The ones who refused were shunned, marginalized, their lives becoming harder and harder to live in a society that had been completely transformed by this system. Faith, the figure said, will become a scarce commodity. Those who remain faithful will be tested in ways they cannot yet imagine, but they will find strength in their conviction. The world will grow darker, but there will always be light for those who seek it. The visions began to fade, and the overwhelming peace I had felt before returned. I was no longer floating through a future I didn't understand. I was standing at the threshold of it, realizing that I was being shown these truths for a reason. The future was unfolding before me, and I had to be ready. The time to prepare is now, the voice of the figure said, gentle but firm. Do not wait for the world to change. Change now. Seek truth. Seek community, seek the divine. You must be prepared. As the last of the visions faded away, I was left with one truth, one question, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. The mark was coming, but it was not too late to awaken. The journey had only just begun, and the path would not be easy, but I was not alone. I had been shown the way. Now I had to walk it. I stood there in that strange otherworldly place, the vision still vivid in my mind. The peace I had once felt had shifted, replaced now by an unsettling sense of urgency. The figure had shown me the future, an unnerving, gradual unfolding of events that I knew I could not ignore. The mark was not just a distant prophecy. It was something that was already creeping into the fabric of society, subtle and silent, like the slow tide that was already rising, unseen beneath the surface. The divine figure had been clear. The mark, this technology that promised safety, security, and convenience, was not just a physical symbol, it was an ideological system, a subtle manipulation that would infiltrate every corner of life. It would not come at one moment of mass revelation. No, it would seep into the world like a virus, quiet and insidious, until one day it would be too late to turn back. I felt the presence of the figure again, a calm reassurance like the warmth of a mother's hand. The world will not wake up to the truth all at once. It will come slowly, piece by piece, until it is a part of everyday life. And by then, many will have already accepted it without realizing the cost. I tried to process the enormity of what I was being shown. At first, the mark would be easy to accept, wrapped in promises of better lives, convenience, and ease. Society would be fed a constant stream of reassurances. The media, the governments, the corporations, they would all sing the same song, one of progress and perfection, of a new era where everything would be righted, a world free from poverty, war, hunger, a world of peace. I saw how it would begin, not with a loud bang, but with a whisper, a nudge in the right direction. It would be marketed as a small, voluntary step, a chip, a token, a new way of connecting. At first, it would seem harmless. We're just improving things, the rhetoric would go. This will make life easier, safer, better. I watched as people lined up willingly to receive it, believing in the promises that came with it. The first people to accept the mark were the ones who saw it as a blessing. It was for their families, for their children. They were told it would help them live longer, safer lives. They were promised the ability to pay instantly, to communicate without barriers, to access anything they needed whenever they needed it. And I just felt this testament to the fact that a single swipe of the hand and everything was at their fingertips. I watched as the mark slowly spread through society, becoming an everyday part of life. Initially, it would be so seamless, so practical that it seemed impossible to resist. The convenience was too great to ignore, and the promises seemed too good to be true. But the figure's voice broke through my thoughts, deepening the weight of the revelation. Do not be deceived by convenience. The mark will not force you to accept it. It will only tempt you, coax you into a false sense of security. You will feel safe with it, but you will not be free. I felt a deep sadness in the figure's tone, as if they were grieving for what was to come. The system will control every aspect of life. Those who accept it will slowly be bound to it in ways they do not fully understand. At first, it will seem like a blessing, but slowly it will begin to demand more compliance, more loyalty, more submission. I watched the people who had accepted the mark slowly change. At first, it was small things, a greater reliance on the system for everything, work, health, relationships, all mediated through the mark. Over time, however, it became clear that the mark was more than just a convenience. It was a tether. The technology that promised freedom became an invisible chain binding its users in ways they couldn't escape. I saw one man, a father, who had once proudly accepted the mark for the sake of his family. At first, it had given him more time, more money, more access to everything he needed. But as the years went by, his relationship with his children faltered. He became too dependent on the system, and his ability to think for himself, to feel for himself, began to fade. He no longer thought for himself. Had his trust in it had grown so strong that he no longer realized he was being led astray. The figure's voice came again, this time with an almost sorrowful urgency. You see, it is not the mark itself that destroys. It is the system that builds around it. It will take away your freedom slowly, piece by piece, until you are no longer the person you were meant to be. The scenes before me shifted again, and I was shown the subtle changes that would affect not just individuals, but whole communities. The divisions would grow. Those who refused the mark would find themselves increasingly isolated. They would be pushed to the margins, their lives made harder by the very society that once promised them inclusion and equality. The system would work its way through every institution, every structure, until it was the only reality left. But the greatest danger, the figure told me, was not just the external changes. It was the change within the hearts of those who accepted it. The more you give into the system, the further you will move away from your faith, from your true connection to the divine. The mark is not merely a physical symbol, it is a reflection of your choice. To accept it is to deny the true source of your strength, your peace, your purpose. I felt a deep sense of unease as I watched the people I had known, my own family among them, accept the mark. The subtle transformations were hard to notice at first, but over time, the disconnection became undeniable. Their faith wavered. Their relationships grew shallow. The things that had once mattered, the simple joys of life, the deep connections, the love, began to fade away, replaced by the cold, efficient promises of the system. And people would no longer see each other for who they were. They would only see what the system allowed them to be. The Fagiri's voice grew louder in my mind. This is the deception. The promise of convenience, safety, and progress will seduce you into accepting what will ultimately enslave you. It will test your faith, test your resolve, but there is still time to choose. There is still time to turn away. I felt the weight of those words sink into my soul. The path was not yet set. I still had the power to choose, but the warning was clear. Once the system had fully taken hold, it would be almost impossible to break free. The light around me began to fade, and the figure's voice softened. Do not let the world blind you. The mark will come for you, but you do not have to accept it. You can resist, you can stand firm, but you must prepare now. Strengthen your faith, build your community. The trials ahead will be great, but you are not alone. The vision faded completely, leaving me in the stillness. A chill ran through me, and I realized the truth of what I had seen. It wasn't a distant future, it was happening now. The choice would come sooner than I thought, and the deception was already beginning to take root. The question remained, would I be ready? The world around me seemed still, the divine presence that had guided me now silent but ever present. I felt as if time itself had stopped, giving me the space to absorb everything I had learned. But the weight of the knowledge, the gravity of the warnings, was not something I could simply keep to myself. The figure's voice, soft but resolute, broke through the quiet. You have seen the dangers that lie ahead, the voice said, filled with compassion. But there is more for you to understand. The truth is not meant for you alone. It is meant to be shared, passed on, and lived. The words resonated deep within me. I had felt the urgency in the visions, the growing sense of spiritual emptiness that would consume those who fell into the system's grip. But now I felt an even greater responsibility, a calling to prepare, not just myself, but others, to build something stronger than the technological conveniences that would one day swallow the world whole. You must first prepare yourself spiritually and practically. This is the foundation. Only then can you be a beacon to others, a guiding light in the coming darkness. The divine figure's tone was calm, but I could feel the depth of the message. The world was moving at a pace that left little room for reflection or discernment. People were already consumed by their daily lives, by the distractions of modern life. Technology had woven itself so deeply into society that the idea of living without it seemed almost impossible. But I had seen how the mark, that seemingly harmless technology, would gradually strip away the very essence of what made life meaningful. I had seen how people's faith would wane, how their hearts would grow distant from the divine. And by that, I mean they would start to lose faith. Spiritual growth must be your priority, the voice continued. You cannot navigate the challenges ahead without a firm connection to your faith. It must be a relationship, not a ritual, a living connection, deep and unshakable, that cannot be swayed by the shifting tides of this world. I felt the profound truth of those words as if they were imprinted on my soul. The connection to the divine could not be replaced by technology. No gadget, no system, no convenience could offer the peace, the strength, or the guidance that a deep, authentic relationship with the divine could provide. How do I prepare? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, knowing full well the answer was not one of simple action, but of transformation. The figure's response was gentle but firm. You must begin by deepening your own spiritual practices. Prayer, meditation, contemplation, these are the foundations upon which your faith will be built. But it must not end there. You must seek wisdom, discernment, and clarity in all things. Know the signs of the times and prepare your heart for the trials ahead. The vision shifted, and I was shown an image of myself standing among a group of people, friends, family, and strangers who had all chosen to stand firm in their faith despite the growing pressure of society around them. Together, we were building something stronger than just individual beliefs. We were creating a community, a network of support and love, a fortress against the forces of division and deception. Community will be your strength, the figure continued. In the days ahead, you will need each other more than ever. Build strong bonds, not just with those you already know, but with others who share your heart for truth and justice. Do not isolate yourself, for the trials will be too great to face alone. I saw the community growing, not out of fear, but out of a shared commitment to something higher. It was not a community based on convenience or technological advantage, but on mutual support, love, and shared faith. It was a place where wisdom would be shared, where the faithful could strengthen one another, and where people would stand together in the face of trials. But the figure's guidance didn't stop there. Spiritual preparation must go hand in hand with practical preparation. You must not only prepare your soul, but also your body and mind. Learn to live with less dependence on the system, on the conveniences that will soon become a trap. I was shown visions of people learning old skills, skills that were once thought to be outdated in the face of modern technology: gardening, carpentry, preserving food, sewing clothes, and other practical skills that could provide independence and sustainability in a world where the mark would slowly take over. These were not just skills for survival, they were a way of weird establishing a connection to the earth, to community, and to a more grounded, simpler way of life. The divine figure's voice came again, filled with love and certainty. Prepare your mind as well. Learn to think critically, to discern truth from deception. The world will be flooded with false promises, easy solutions, and superficial assurances. You must train your mind to seek the deeper truth, the one that lies beyond the surface. The images in my mind shifted once more, showing me a world where people were living without fear, without dependence on the system that had once threatened to enslave them. They were independent, resilient, and strong, not because they had rejected the world, but because they had chosen to live in harmony with the world and with each other. You must also share these lessons with others, the figure said, its tone now filled with a quiet urgency. Do not wait for the crisis to strike. Share the message of preparation, of love, of community. It is not enough to prepare yourself alone. Others need to understand that they too must stand firm. They too must seek faith, discernment, and practical skills. They must build what will endure beyond the coming storm. The task ahead was not easy. It would require sacrifice, dedication, and the willingness to stand apart from the world in many ways. But the figure's words gave me hope. I was not alone. We were not alone. And together we could build something stronger than any system or technology that threatened to tear us apart. You have been shown the way, the figure whispered. Now it is up to you to walk it, to lead others, and to build what will last beyond the trials ahead. I stood there, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a deep peace. It was a peace that came not from the world's promises of safety and convenience, but from something far deeper, something unshakable. I had seen the way forward. The task was clear. Now it was time to begin. And with that, the vision faded, but the lessons remained. In my heart, I knew what I had to do. The future was uncertain, but I would face it with faith, with strength, and with a community of like-minded souls. Together, we would stand firm. Together, we would be ready. The atmosphere around me shifted, the once heavy presence of the divine figure now transformed me into a gentle light. I felt a profound stillness, an overwhelming sense of peace, as if the entire universe was holding its breath, waiting for the next revelation. In that stillness, I knew the journey was nearing its end. The divine figure, whose presence had become an unshakable source of strength, now spoke one final time. Do not fear the darkness that is coming. Though the world may grow colder, though the light may seem to fade, there is always the possibility of revival, the voice said, soft yet resolute. The world, in all its fragility, is never beyond hope. As long as there are hearts willing to believe, to love, to walk in faith, there is always a way forward. I listened, but the words carried more than just comfort. They carried the weight of a promise, a truth that reached beyond the fabric of time. The world I had seen in my visions, the one where the mark of the beast had spread its reach, where people had become numb to their own spiritual hunger, was not the end. It was a chapter, a dark chapter, yes, but not the final one. There was always the possibility of revival, always the potential for salvation. You must remember this, the figure continued, that no matter how heavy the shadows become, no matter how deep the divide between the faithful and the deceived, the light cannot be extinguished. It lives within each of you. who chooses to believe. It is a fire that will not be smothered, no matter how fierce the winds of this world may blow. The message was clear. The world would indeed grow darker. It would be easy to despair, to lose hope in the face of overwhelming odds. The visions I had seen were not merely distant warnings. They were signs of what would come to pass. But in the midst of this growing darkness, there was a deeper, quieter truth. The light of faith could never truly be dimmed. Even when all seemed lost, even when the promises of technology and convenience seemed to offer a fleeting sense of safety, there was something far more powerful. There was the promise of spiritual awakening, the potential for a new beginning. Faith above all will carry you through, the figure said, its voice both firm and compassionate. It is the foundation that cannot be shaken. In times of trial, when the world pushes you to conform, when the pressure mounts to accept what is false, it is your faith that will sustain you. Stand firm in it. Let it be your shield, your sword, and your guide. I close my eyes, feeling the weight of these words settle into my soul. The divine figure's message had become more than just a lesson. It had become a mission not just to protect my own heart and soul, but to share this message of hope with others. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was a journey worth taking. It would require strength, wisdom, and most of all, faith. But I was not alone. None of us were. The divine presence was with us every step of the way. Remember, the figure whispered, you are never alone. Even when the world seems empty, even when you feel isolated, there is always a higher power walking beside you, guiding you and leading you towards something greater. Trust in that. Trust in me. The words echoed in my heart as I felt my consciousness being pulled back to my earthly body. The light of the divine figure faded, but the sense of peace remained. The connection I had felt, the undeniable presence of love and grace, was not something I could easily forget. It had changed me, deeply, irrevocably. I was returning to life, but not in the same way I had known it before. I could feel it. An inner transformation, a shift in how I viewed the world and my place within it. I could feel the weight of the mission before me, and I knew what I had to do. The road would be difficult, the world would continue to grow more complex and deceptive, but I was now armed with a new understanding. Faith, community, and spiritual readiness were the keys to survival, not just in the physical sense, but in the deepest, most profound way possible. As my body began to awaken from the numbness, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had been given a gift, a second chance, a chance to live differently, to share this message, and to remind others of what truly mattered. I felt as though I had been placed on this earth for a purpose, one that transcended the fleeting distractions of everyday life. My mission was clear. The world might grow darker, people might grow more distant from their true selves, the technologies that promise convenience might slowly lead them into spiritual ruin, but the revival of faith, of love, of community was still possible. As long as there were hearts willing to listen, willing to seek the truth, there is always hope. And so, with this renewed sense of purpose, I returned, not as the person I once was, but as one who had seen a deeper truth. I would live my life not just for myself, but for those around me, helping to guide them toward the light. I would share the lessons of faith, of spiritual strength, of preparing both heart and mind for the challenges ahead. The darkness may come, it may consume nations and societies, but the light, that ever-present light, will never be extinguished. And as long as there are souls who seek it, there will always be the possibility of revival, of salvation. And that I knew was the most profound truth of all.